Are you looking for high-performance AV distribution that just works? Meet NetVio, a UK-based innovator delivering cutting-edge AV over IP, HD-Base-T, HDMI, USB, and Dante AVA hardware, backed by intuitive, license-free configuration and control tools. The NetVio 360 configurator and license-free NetVio Go user control app makes setup and user control effortless, while the open universal API and pre-built drivers ensure seamless integrations with Control4, Crestron, RTI, QSYS, and more. NetVio is exclusively distributed in Australia by Chords Australia. Check them out at netvio.com.au. That's netvio.com.au. Hello and welcome to Master Integrator. I'm your host, Paul Skelton. You know that feeling when someone tells you that they've secured the network because they've changed the Wi-Fi password from admin to password 1 or password with a 0 instead of the letter O? Yeah, that moment of silent panic. Well, luckily for you, that's what today's episode is all about. Cybersecurity is one of those topics that everyone says is important, but very few people truly understand, especially in the smart home industry where systems get more complex every year and client expectations are sky high. From cameras to control systems, if it's connected, it's vulnerable. Yet too often, we confuse networking with cybersecurity, but they're not the same thing. To help us untangle the mess, I sat down with Luke Irwin, the founder of Aegis Cybersecurity. Luke's not the guy trying to sell you a firewall. He's the one who explains where your liability begins, what your insurance won't cover, and why you should never trust a camera with a default password. He also holds the highest tier of certification in the SMB 1001 cybersecurity framework, designed specifically for small and medium businesses like yours. In this conversation, we cover the clear line between IT and cybersecurity, why cyber insurance isn't enough on its own, what integrators should be doing today to protect themselves and their clients, and how to turn basic security hygiene into a managed service and a recurring revenue stream. We also get into the legal side, contracts, disclaimers, and why being an integrator without the right coverage could see you personally liable for millions in damages if something goes wrong. This episode is proudly supported by Chords Australia and their promise of connectivity assured, and Connected Magazine, the place to stay sharp in a rapidly evolving industry. So whether you've just started thinking about security or you're already losing sleep over default router credentials, this one's essential listening. This is Master Integrator. Here's Luke Irwin. So let's get started. Introduce yourself. Tell people a bit about your history, where you come from, what you actually do, and yeah.
Thanks for having me, Paul. My name's Luke Irwin. I am the principal consultant and founder of a firm called Aegis Cybersecurity. It's a governance, risk and compliance, virtual CISO, fractional CISO, or Chief Information Security Officer consultancy based out of Brisbane, but servicing nationally. Our focus is looking at how to identify, manage, and mitigate risk across organizations of all sizes. The smallest client we've worked with is a 6-person not-for-profit domestic violence shelter service, and the largest I've worked with is a 19,000-seat multinational mining conglomerate, and everything in between. But when we say that, we're looking at what are the risks that are present to the business, what can we recommend to manage or mitigate those risks, what solutions can be implemented. And we call out that our point of difference is that we don't sell the hardware or software or the technical implementation solutions. We partner with other specialized firms to do that. So then that way, there's no conflict of interest or even a perception of conflict in our advice. If we say your network has gone to pieces, it's going to cost you $100,000 to fix it, it's not, here's one we prepared earlier. It's, here are 3 companies we will recommend that can implement these solutions for you. Pick the one you like working with because you'll be working with them for 3 to 5 years. And then if the client needs me to manage that ongoing, I can. If they want me to exit at that point, I can. But the whole thing is about managing security risk, implementing the frameworks like ISO, SOC, NIST, SMB 1001, and trying to keep the lights on in the small and medium business space.
So obviously your focus is cybersecurity, where most of the people who listen to this would probably be stronger on the networking front of it,
Yes.
But they might not necessarily understand that there is actually a difference.
Mm-hmm.
So from your experience, are you able to explain exactly when we're talking about cybersecurity, why we're not talking about networking and
Cool.
where that kind of demarcation point is?
Thank you. This is something that has been the consistent pain point across the majority of my career. IT is not cyber, cyber is not IT. The analogy I like to use is they're cousins, they're not twins. So The other way to put it is that IT and support and managed service providers and internal IT, their focus is cost, performance, and availability. They are focused on making sure that what the business wants to spend on tech gets the most effective and efficient tech they need, that it works, that it runs at a pace that needs to support business operations, and that they can get to it when they need to get to it. Cybersecurity is focused on confidentiality, availability, and integrity. Confidentiality. Can only the person who gets to it get to it when they're supposed to? Integrity. Is the data in a state that if it is modified, we can tell? If it's modified without authorized access, we can tell. Is it in the same state we left it? And availability. Can we get to it when we need to get to it? And so as you see there, cybersecurity and IT align on availability, but other than that, we have diverging outcomes. Now, that's not to say that good IT professionals can't become cyber professionals and vice versa. There's a lot of crossover between the industries, and a lot of cybersecurity practices occur on IT equipment. Firewall rules, file access controls on servers. Those are all IT taskings that fall within the cybersecurity domain and remit. But there's a lot of crossover between it, but they aren't the same because the outcomes are different. I have worked with some brilliant, absolutely brilliant IT professionals over the years, and they know their stuff. But when we start delving into the nitty-gritty of cybersecurity and how to assess risk and how to manage risk and how to layer defenses, their knowledge isn't as strong. And that's not their fault. It's not their specialization. You go back 15 years ago, I used to manage an environment where I had 6,000 servers in the fleet, 1,600 domain controllers in 14 forested domains across 1,300, 1,400 locations. You ask me to go and build a network where you want that to happen and you need all the tin to make that happen. 15 years ago, I could do that. Nowadays, I don't even know the right vendor to call to buy the equipment from other than, hey, maybe HP because they sell stuff. It just comes down to a specialization. The stuff has become so complicated nowadays. Everyone has a niche. And we're not competitors, we're collaborators. We need to work together to achieve the outcome that the clients need. And I don't say this to be a bastard to IT guys. They're great at what they do, but we need to have those conversations where it goes beyond their skill set. And there's nothing wrong with not knowing. Knowing your limitations and knowing what you don't know is maturity. It helps you get better. Like I partner with an MSP where I need a client that needs stuff done on servers and networks, and you go and design it for me. My focus is the governance and risk. I will let the specialists do the specialist work. Has that answered that question in a roundabout sort of way?
It has. And what I'm wondering, because I'm touching on what you've just said there, is obviously people don't know what they don't know. So is there an easy identifiable way to say this is kind of where networking crosses into cyber? Like if you are an IT guy or a networking guy, you sit there and go, okay, this is where I need to call someone in.
That's a very prickly question. So I don't think there's a firm line. It comes down to your own personal position on what you can honestly say that you know and what you don't know. You have to be transparent with yourself as to, am I comfortable and confident setting up complex firewall rules? Am I comfortable setting up all of these network configurations? Like I've worked with partners where if what we're putting in is a flat network, they're fine. So we're talking a 10-person organization, a switch, a firewall, a connection to the internet. Cool, we're done. But I'm not going to introduce them to somebody where we need fault-tolerant firewalls, where you've got a DMZ with secondary firewalls and like internet-facing firewalls, internal firewalls, routing rules to go between, high availability between it, complex VLAN configurations and NATing and all the other rules that go on to make the network be a network. The organizations that get those classes of work, they have a different skill set. But being honest with yourself and knowing where your skill set ends and knowing where to bring in someone else is where you start to work with partners that can help you to lift your own skills and games. I think the only way I can think of to set a defined demarcation point is your own integrity. To go, if this was mine, how would I feel if I was doing it? Do I know enough to do this effectively to meet the client's requirements and to meet the security requirements that are necessary to hit these targets? Sorry, it's a fuzzy answer, but There's a massive debate going on in the cybersecurity community at the moment around professionalization and what defines a professional. And it's been going on for years. It'll be going on for more years, but there's no one answer. I've met cybersecurity professionals that have no formal training, academic, or certification, but are brilliant. Like, I ask them serious and heavy questions, and I'm consistently blown away by their knowledge. At the same time, I've met people with advanced postgraduate qualifications and certifications out as long as their arm. And I'm going, I wouldn't trust this guy to start a campfire. That's the challenge, because the IT industry and the cybersecurity industry and your own industry to an extent is an unregulated industry. Anybody can say they're an expert. But when you go and see your doctor, you want to make sure that that person actually completed medical school, that that person has that trail of evidence and supporting history to justify their position and the trust you're placing in them. We don't have that in the technology space, and there's internal resistance against it. But it just comes down to being honest with yourself and your client, where you need to bring in expert support to help you on a specific point that you may not have the knowledge to solve. Like,
See, I get very confused about the idea of the resistance, especially around certification, because we have this in our industry as well, where people say for years they've been calling out for a standard or a certification within our industry. There is one, and then they don't do it. But then they keep saying that there needs to be one. It's this vicious cycle, and it just is incredibly frustrating.
I see it as a combination of things. There's a little bit of gatekeeping thrown into that mindset, where the focus is on around, well, I've proven I'm good and I want to keep other people out so I can get more of the work. So they should have to prove they can do it, but I shouldn't have to prove myself. Now, to a certain extent, I look at some of the people I work with over the years, and I get why it'd be annoying to go and do an exam or a test or something to prove you know what you know. But at the same time, we're now providing confidence to the public that somebody external to yourself has vouched for you as being an expert. Like, I've got my postgrad quals. Like, I thought I had too much free time running and growing a cybersecurity business that I thought doing my master's degree was a good idea. Yeah, lessons have been learned. But I've also got things like my CISP and my system, which are like two of the gold standards in cybersecurity certifications, which you can't get unless you've got at least 5 years experience for one, 3 for the second. But the pushback is, people don't want to be told to do something that could potentially limit their revenue opportunities. You want to take my business off me. You want to remove me as competition. You want to do all these things. Or one of the arguments doing the rounds is, any scheme that's set up invariably falls into corruption. Look at this scheme and that scheme and that scheme. Like when you look at the legal society, the CPAs, the engineers, and how they regulate their members. They always point to the examples that have failed. But when I've had this discussion with peers, the idea that I've thrown into the mix is that the professionalization discussion, it needs to progress. What industry is the absolute expert of assessing financial risk? Insurance. And who does that? Insurance actuaries. So if you can go and get professional indemnity insurance for you doing what you want to do, which is me as a virtual CISO and governance risk and compliance specialist, and the insurance company wants to underwrite me as an expert in that space, then congratulations, you are now qualified as an expert, because somebody else is putting their financial resources behind you to go, this person isn't an idiot. They are safe to do this work. Now, they're going to work out really quickly who is a good risk and who is a bad risk, because they have shareholders to pay, they have bonuses to pay, they have businesses to run that are based upon limiting their outflow of cash. So as a result, they're going to take on good risks, and they're going to push those who are bad risks to either improve or drop out of the market, therefore improving the health of the market. That's the only solution I can think of that doesn't step on everybody's toes. If you are so good at your job, why would you be concerned that an insurance underwriter or an actuary can assess that? Because they are the absolute wizards at maths.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And to be honest, I always sit there and think, would the same people who don't want to go through certification then come to me and say, there's too many cowboys in the industry? I'm thinking, there's a solution.
Oh, you're completely correct. I see it all the time. I've been called into organizations to look at, hey, we've just had this cyber guy come and do some stuff, but something doesn't feel right. Can you have a look? I go in, I go, oh my God, what's going on here? Pull it apart and do a deep dive on the person who's done the work. And it's like, this person has dropped out of uni or is still at uni, has no qualifications, no background, no experience, no IT background. They're really good at making a website that sells. But you've got this problem where Right now, Paul, you could go and say, hey, I'm a cybersecurity consultant, hire me. There is nothing that prevents you doing that. It's not a protected term. Tell you what, if you go and hang a shingle up saying I'm a doctor or a dentist, watch how quickly you get smacked on the knuckles. Or I'm a pilot. It's like there's a reason we have those certification pathways, because we want to provide trust to the market that these are valid and known services. And that there are strong-handed ways and poor ways of doing it. And the only answer I've got is insurance, and then a market and a society and whatever else that needs to happen to support that can build off the side of that, and benchmarks and minimum standards. Yeah, it's a curly question. I wish there was an easier answer.
And I'm glad we got into it this early into the conversation and haven't
I,
derailed.
I apologize for anyone listening if I have put you to sleep.
Okay, so let's go back to cybersecurity. And it is around still the idea of certification. Something you mentioned a little bit earlier is SMB 1001.
Yes.
Are you able to explain what that is and where that might come into play for the people listening to this podcast?
Yeah, fantastic. So and I'll call it as a point of transparency, I'm the only holder of the Diamond SMB 1001 standard globally. That basically means I speak to organizations and teach them about it, take them on the journey if they want to do it, or I can make introductions to other firms to do that for you. But the SMB 1001 is a cybersecurity framework aimed at the right amount of security for the SMB space. And by that, they mean the home automation businesses, the vendors who sell you stuff, the florist down the road, your plumber, the small retail chain you buy stuff from. Most security frameworks in the cybersecurity space are aimed at the medium plus sort of size. That's things like ISO 27001, SOC 2, NIST, CMMC, things like that. Lots of acronyms that are complex, convoluted, and time-consuming to pull apart. You can put ISO 27001 into a 20-person company. It's going to cost them a lot of money and take a lot of overhead to run that, because it is a fairly complex framework to manage. But because it assesses risk. It's not prescriptive, and it's scope-driven in how you assess risk and what you choose to cover. The SMB 1001, it targets the business. That's it. The business is done. It comes in 5 levels: bronze, silver, gold, platinum, diamond. The first 3 levels, bronze, silver, gold, they are self-attested by a director of the organization, meaning you can buy the standard, buy the license or the subscription to I've forgotten the word they use, or the subscription, actually, that's the word. Follow the controls and make sure you can meet those technical and non-technical controls in there. And then you as the director can sign off on that saying, we meet these requirements, and you're then issued a certification for bronze, silver, or gold. One of the things I'll call out, and it's only available till the end of this month of July 2025, is that if you go and do the Cyber Wardens training program, which is a cybersecurity awareness training set up by the federal government, Commonwealth Bank, Telstra, and a few others, it's about 12 minutes long. That is free security awareness training of what to do, what not to do, how to look at a dodgy link, things like that. It is the basic entry level. If you want to do more than that, happy to make intros to specialist trainers. Once you've completed that via Cyber Wardens, they'll give you the SMB 1001 bronze license at no cost. Complete that within 4 weeks. They'll give you the silver license at no cost. Complete that. And then you're at a level where there's a panel of cybersecurity insurance underwriters you've now met their minimum condition for insurance. You can now take out cybersecurity insurance on your business, and we'll touch on that a little bit. But then if you want to do a bit more, you've got the gold level, which is $395 annually, which has some more controls. And then when you cross into the platinum and diamond level controls, you're now looking at audited level controls. So an external auditor has to come in and do assessments, and it's a bit more complex and a bit more time consuming. But these controls aren't hard. Control number 1 on all of them, engage a technical expert. Cool. I'm fairly certain that most of your members and listeners are going to be technical experts in some shape or form. Are you capable of setting up a firewall? Are you capable of ordering an internet service? Are you capable of making sure a laptop or desktop doesn't have local admin rights? Things like that, the stock standard sort of stuff. When you're looking at gold, you're only looking at no more than 20 odd controls to do this sort of things. And some of them are non-technical controls, like have an acceptable use policy, have a confidentiality clause in your employment contracts. It's all these things to make sure that you've got the right amount of security for your business. And at the gold level, that's good for most organizations because it sets a benchmark that can be sold to, that can be met, that can be attained without having to go and buy enterprise grade Palo Altos with cloud access service brokers and data loss prevention systems and insider threat monitoring programs that are overkill for an SMB. So for the installer community and the installer business community and some of the clients you're doing this work for, you're able to essentially advocate for these standards because if you're implementing technical services or controls, you can on-sell this standard to them. The standard is put together by an organization called DSI or Dynamic Standards International, and they're always looking for more partners in that space. It's a fantastic framework. I did the diamond level to prove it could be done because I come from a governance background. It's took me a bit of time, but it was achievable. And I'm a one-man operation doing this type of work. I'll quickly jump onto the cybersecurity insurance thing. I'll call out, I am not an insurance broker. This is not financial advice. Please speak to an independent broker. My insurance company will hang me if I don't say that. Organizations that don't take out cybersecurity insurance are putting themselves at risk of not having the financial resources to attempt a recovery in the event of a data breach or ransomware attack. The primary purpose of that is to provide you the legal, PR, and technical and financial support necessary to come back from what is normally an extinction level event. If you get ransomware, the odds of you coming back and you don't have insurance is almost zero. If you've got really good backups that have been really well configured, becomes a maybe. But if you want to go and hire an incident response team, you want to go and hire the legal team to review your inbox, because let's say, I'm going to take a guess, Paul. I'm going to guess your inbox is huge. Let's say 5,000 emails over the last however long.
Easily.
I am bad guy hacker. I get access to your email inbox because I bypass your multi-factor or I do something else. If I've now accessed your inbox and I've downloaded it, every single email record now needs to be reviewed by legal counsel because we have to make a determination if that record or that email record contains personally identifiable information. So you now have a team of 20 paralegals sifting through every one of your received items, sent items, deleted items, draft items to see, is there information in there we need to make a declaration to the Privacy Commissioner on? How much do you think a team of 20 paralegals from a tier 1 law firm is going to cost you for a week? 2 weeks? 3 weeks?
Yeah. Yeah, just a little bit.
Yeah, that number gets really big really, really quickly. And that's one of the things where the cyber insurance policies kick in and help you with the financial resources to recover from that. There's a whole heap of stuff you can do to prevent the attacks, but having the policies as part of your public liability, professional indemnity, get a cyber add-on for it. It's one of the best things you can do. It limits your loss. And if you don't have a broker that does that, hit me up. I'll make introductions to 3 or 4 that I know. Just have the conversation. It's the best thing you can do. Otherwise, one of the lines I like throwing out or tossing out is luck is not a strategy. Hope is not a strategy. You've got to have a plan for when things go bad. And it's my job to wear the tinfoil hat so other people don't.
Connected Magazine is your go-to publication for the commercial and residential AV and smart home industry. Every edition features 3 in-depth product reviews from working integrators. In this edition, the team tests out Shure's SLX 4Q Plus wireless receiver with Dante, Christie's latest 4K home cinema projector, the 860IS, and Sonance's new in-wall speakers, the SA466. Check it all out in the latest Connected magazine, and don't forget to visit the website for more reviews, news, and product releases. Links in this episode's description.
But yeah.
So when we are talking about cyber insurance, cybersecurity insurance then, obviously what most people would be familiar with is cyber security insurance for their own business.
Yes.
We're talking to a lot of people here who are installing networks in the homes of potentially very high net worth clients.
Yes.
How do they get covered for those networks that they deploy?
Okay, so we're talking about the networks that your peers, colleagues are installing into these things, and are they providing those networks as a managed service or is it a once and done?
I would say it depends on the integrator, but it's probably 50-50.
Okay. So if it's a once and done, make sure speak to legal counsel and make sure your contracts and service agreements are very clear where your responsibility starts and ends. Otherwise, you're opening up a potential liability loophole. get a good lawyer. If you need a good tech-focused lawyer, again, let me know. I know quite a few. You need to have that coverage for yourself if it's in a once and done, because then you're transferring ownership of that responsibility onto the client, but the client needs to be made aware that they carry that responsibility. Otherwise, you didn't tell me. This is your fault. In which case, make sure you've got really good professional indemnity insurance. From the other side, if you're running as a managed service, then you need to make sure your MSAs or your master service agreements are well structured. And again, legal counsel. They need to be well written, well drafted. Your contracts need to have things in there like your limitation of liabilities per your insurance policies and other things like that. All that matters because it helps shield you. It's also how you run your company and how you structure your company. Are you running as a sole trader? If you are running as a sole trader, you're now putting your house on the line. If you're running as a company, as a trust which owns a company and you're a director or an employee of the company, then you're creating legal shields for your organization. But again, this isn't legal advice. Please seek legal counsel. That is a very complex area that you need somebody who has done many years of university training and other skilling to understand how that works, because it is complex and convoluted. And if you're dealing with ultra high net worth people, they can afford a better barrister than you can afford a lawyer. So you've got to have the right shields in place. If you're running as a managed service, you need to make sure you're actually meeting your obligations under those contracts as well. One of the things I see a lot of managed service providers in the IT support space come unstuck is they call things like a quarterly business review, which is periodically they'll sit down with a client, evaluate what they've got, have a chat about tech and stuff. Now, if something goes wrong and they haven't held the quarterly meeting, they're now in breach of contract. Does that create a liability because of that breach of contract in the event of a security incident on the client? Change the verbiage. Change it to periodic business review, periodic systems review, periodic systems analysis. You want to be setting up things like monitoring and management of those devices. So when an update becomes available, you're not looking at it in 3 months' time when you're going on site to do an update. It tells you, hey, an update's now available for this camera, this controller, this laptop, this switch, whatever it might be. You get told and you can deploy those updates remotely. And that's where you want the managed services agreements, because they create the monthly recurring revenue. And you include that in there. There's so much advanced monitoring systems available nowadays in both the IT and the OT space, because you guys play in the OT and the IoT space. There's so much out there that can tell you when updates are needed and support you in applying them. For all intents and purposes, you are running an IoT-focused managed services company, if that's how you want to structure it. It just comes down to what level of risk you want to take on and making sure that your contracts and your master services agreements and your insurance actually aligns with that. So if you're doing stuff, make sure insurance actually covers you for it. I work with tech partners where they go, oh, yeah, we respond to email compromises. It's like, is that on your insurance policy? Why? Your insurance policy says you're a managed services provider. Managed service providers don't provide cybersecurity incident response services. You need to have that noted on the policy. Otherwise, your insurance company won't cover you. If your insurance company won't cover you, that means you now need to cover it out of your own pocket. Do you happen to have the spare $3 million that's going to litigate here? No? Okay, cool. Get it in your insurance agreement. All these little pieces have to line up to protect you and your business. Get a good lawyer. It's one of the best things you can do.
Unfortunately, I think we found another trigger point for me because we're talking about insurance. And I'm trying so hard to bite my tongue. I'll say again, and I know that people listening to this are probably sick of me saying it, but if you are an integrator and you are insured as an electrician, but you don't hold your A grade, you are not insured. Please get that sorted because you do not have insurance.
Yeah, you're impersonating somebody who has insurance, which means you're opening yourself up for liability. You got to remember, like, Australia is litigious. You need to have the protections in place to protect you, your assets, your business, your welfare, your family's assets. Yeah, Paul's spot on there. Yeah.
I do get met with these kind of glazed over looks when I say it. And I'm thinking, it doesn't matter if that's what your insurance company said you are. If you can't prove you're an electrician, you're not.
Find a new broker. If your underwriter isn't coming to the table, find a new underwriter. Again, there's people out there who can introduce you to their underwriters. I get similar things when I chat to managed services providers and other technicians. We're talking about what they're insured for and what they're covered for. And we start talking through how are they assessing a risk. And it's like, if you're not assessing the risk, how are you saying that you're meeting this requirement? Like, you've got to be aware that if something goes wrong, you've still got to while it's on your policy, you still got to justify it to your underwriter. You got to explain why you were doing that. You have to show that you actually know what you're doing. So there's all these things that you have to be across. And that is the downside of running your own business. You're 10% actually doing what you love doing, 90% doing paperwork and everything else, and 50% marketing.
So let's go looking for another trigger point then. You mentioned before some of the requirements around getting to the different levels of
Yes.
SMB 1001.
Yes.
They seem quite straightforward and quite basic. Do you find that within your side of the industry that people tend to overcomplicate things? Is there
Yes.
the risk of doing too much that's unnecessary?
Yeah, exactly. It happens a lot. And part of the challenge I come across is so many organizations, they are driven, I'm going to phrase this a bit diplomatically. There are a lot of organizations that aren't selling the product of best fit. They are selling the product of best margin.
From their own back pocket.
Yes, exactly. So, and that's one of the reasons I've taken the approach where I don't sell hardware, I don't sell software. I go, based upon your problem, this is what will fix your problem best. Cool. Here are 3 companies that can do that. The challenge with people overcomplicating is from a purely cybersecurity perspective, overcomplication makes things a lot harder to deal with and a lot more expensive. But there's a level of complication needed because you want those fault tolerant systems. You want those monitoring systems. So you set up listing points on various things across the network and across the servers and across data points. But then you want something to watch that monitoring system as well. So you know if part of the monitoring system goes down, you get told about it because that could be an indicator of compromise. So someone turns off, I don't know, an antivirus. You want to know when that's been turned off because has it failed? Has it crashed? Has someone turned it off intentionally or has something attacked it and killed it? So we need to know about that. But there is a point where you can take it too far where you're essentially trying to boil the ocean. There's no point dropping in ISO 27001 to a 20-person florist. Like, there is no point at all, unless they happen to be dealing with more credit card data than any florist should be, in which case we probably need to get AUSTRAC involved in looking at them. But it's a different discussion for money laundering. But the advantage of the SMB framework is that it's the right amount of security for a small business. It aligns to their general risk profile. The best way I can describe it is that, I'll use another analogy. You're on the savannah, you're running away from a lion. You don't have to be faster than the lion. You've got to be faster than the person you're with. And to contextualize that statement, most of the cybercrime gangs or cybercrime operators are highly organized. They're highly efficient. They are corporatized. They have KPIs. They have metrics. You must issue X amount of ransoms per week. You must extract X amount of dollars per month from these organizations. There are HR departments. There are customer service departments for organizations they've on-sold their malware to. They are corporatized in such a highly efficient manner because there is so much money at stake and corporations are really good at making money. Now, one of the challenges is that most small businesses, the 3 common answers I get back of late from we're too small to be a target, we have nothing of value. Or the one that terrifies me lately is, we don't need cybersecurity because we've taken out cybersecurity insurance. Well, my response to that is, I've got car insurance, I still wear a seatbelt. That one it blows my mind. But the first 2, we're looking at, let's say on a scale of 1 to 100, with 100 being complete enterprise grade, banking level security or military level security, most small business is going to be around a 10. So the bad guys are throwing mud that hits a 20 or lower. And that's it. And when the mud hits the wall, it sticks. That could be a ransomware. That could be a business email compromise. It could be a phishing link. It could be click here to download your latest invoice. It could be any number of things. What we're talking about with the SMB 1001 framework is getting that SMB level to say a 30, a 40, a 50. You don't need to go to the 100. You don't need the ISO, the SOC, the NIST, the complex frameworks. For these smaller organizations with 20 seats, $10 million, things like that, once you start crossing those thresholds, we need to have a conversation if it's still the right fit or if you need to be looking at a more risk and scope-centric approach. But at those sorts of sizes and scales, it's well positioned to go, this does enough. Like, one of the controls is install a firewall, change the default passwords, all stuff that I'm sure that your members and listeners are well aware of. Don't leave the default password on an externally accessible camera. It's like, that's asking for an attack. Patch the devices. Don't share accounts. Implement multi-factor. Like, we're not talking rocket science level stuff here. We're talking security 101 basics. And it's just trying to shift that baseline to a better level that makes the standard run-of-the-mill attacks just bounce off. Because that's all we're looking to do with SMBs. They're not going to have the level of resilience that enterprise has, because enterprise, they can afford to drop tens of millions of dollars on recovery. Note that even if they recover, most of them only get back to about 80% of where they were. And even then, that takes months. It's not yeah, we've restored from backups. It's great. You've restored from backups in what priority? How much data has to be rekeyed? What else is broken? What integrations are broken? What damage to customer trust has occurred? Did we restore from backups we knew the bad guys hadn't already infiltrated? Because if you restore a compromised system, you've just restored bad guy access. So there's all these other things, and the SMB framework puts in enough security for the SMB to be able to recover. One of the other best things any organization can do is training. Run your staff through security awareness training. Like, I can't stress that enough. Like, there's a phrase that does the round in cybersecurity, and I despise it with all my passion. Humans are the weakest link. I hate that. It is denigrating and demeaning to the staff. Humans are the frontline firewall. They are your human level firewall. They are your best mechanism to protect your business. If your staff, your colleagues, your peers know what not to do, know how to read a link, know how to recognize a dodgy website, your risk profile and threat profile just falls away so rapidly, because most attacks need a human to initiate it. If you're patching your stuff and you've got multi-factor and everything's up to date, the last remaining major weakness is the human. So we train the human. We make them more impervious to being tricked into doing something they shouldn't do. Training is one of the best things you can do. Cyber wardens to start with. And if you want to do more, happy to make intros to specialists.
Okay, so let's talk about training, because
Yes.
that is obviously a very important area. Instead of talking about training for people deploying their own cybersecurity systems within their companies, but if they're deploying it for other people,
Yes.
what's the base minimum expectation there? What should they have? And if they don't want to go to be a full expert, and that's when they call someone else in, but at a base level, what should every integrator actually know from an education perspective?
Okay, so we're talking about the people doing the installation and integration work. So what they should be knowing from the basic perspective, why they should be using MFA or multi-factor authentication. And ideally, why they are using not SMS-based or email-based authentication. You want to be using the Microsoft Authenticator apps, because SMS authentication is easily compromised. Now, the odds of you being a target is low, but it is still possible to do. The other thing you want is if they do what's called a SIM cloning attack, where someone basically tricks a telco to port your mobile phone number onto a SIM card they own. It's normally done so they can reset your banking password and your banking MFA. But how are you going to ring the bank to tell them to ignore it? Your phone doesn't work. So, use the SMS authentication app. So that's one of the basic ones for training. Having one of the other big things that comes through a lot is fake invoices. So a basic process that this is covered in the SMB 1001 as well is have an invoice validation process. So if someone sends you an email saying, hey, our banking details have updated, please change from X to Y, you don't pay it and you don't ring the number on that. What you do is you go to Google, you go to the company's website, you go to your CRM and you look up their mobile phone number there or a number there and you ring that number. When you speak to someone, you do not read them the number, you make them read back what their current banking details are. Because if I go, hey, Paul, I've got this email saying the invoice is BSB 123456 and the account number's 098121. And you go, yeah, mate, that's right. And you're the hacker. I need to go, hey, Paul, I've just received this invoice from your company. Please confirm your updated banking details. Now, if you don't read back the right number that's on this invoice, then you know something's gone wrong, in which case you go, hey, someone's impersonating your email accounts. In most organizations, I can normally do an impersonation attack on someone for invoice fraud in about 30 to 40 seconds. Because most of them don't have the basics of email security set up. And the basics of email security is SPF, DKIM, and DMARC. If anyone wants a longer conversation, that's a separate 30-minute chat. But without those three things, it is easy to impersonate you. I can take over your identity from an email perspective. I might even actually send you a test email afterwards on this, Paul, just to show it. It's really straightforward. And attackers do this all the time. So understanding how to recognize invoice fraud. There's a big one around voice impersonation and video impersonation due to deepfake AIs doing a bit of a pickup. There was an attack against a large engineering firm where it cost them $38 million. And the instructions were issued over a Teams call, transfer money from this account to that account, and the person did it. It's a failure of controls. They didn't validate in writing. They didn't ask for a paper trail. And does the person normally ask that way? It's learning to recognize the unusual or suspect behaviors. If you're working with a boss or part of a team, does your boss often call you at 4:30 on a Friday or send you an email at 4:30 on a Friday afternoon going, this invoice has to be paid now or else, or I will fire you? Have they ever said that before? Is that normal? Or I need you to go and get 20 gift cards. Why do you want gift cards? Oh, we need to do this. It's like, but cool. Pick up the phone and ring the boss. You need to have that human layer validation to check that. So you're checking for invoices. You're making sure you got multi-factor. Use a password manager. Don't use common passwords. So there's a class of attack called a password spraying attack and password stuffing attack. Okay, Paul, I guess your password, it's your dog's name and the year that you got the dog. Cool. So I get your email address and I get that password and I flood that out to every service you may have. Netflix, Amazon Prime, the local library, the local gym, whatever else there might be, to see what other data I can get on you to aggregate. And hopefully one of these sites has a poorly configured credit card storage system so I can just see your credit card details. But otherwise, I'm getting more data about you, your date of birth, your address, your siblings, your kids, your wife, your pets, your everything. So I can now build a better profile on you to target you better for phishing attacks. Use a password manager. Don't save passwords in the browser. There are specific classes of malware that attack passwords in the browser and extract them. Use a commercial one. Personally, and this is not me advocating for them, I use a product called NordPass. Cost me $52 for 2 years, 50 cents a week. If you cannot afford that, we need to introduce you to a finance specialist because you have budgeting problems. But anything that can have multi-factor, put multi-factor on it. Ideally via the app. If SMS is the only option, then SMS will do. But via an authentication app, one of the best things. QR codes. There's a range of attacks doing QR codes on parking meters. So bad guys are putting QR codes over the top of the barcodes on some parking meters. So when you scan that, you're putting in your credit card details into a fake payment site. So not only are you going to have money stolen, you're going to get a parking ticket. So your day's going to suck twice. Tap and go. Use the app. Do something else, but the QR code. QR codes, it's not to say they're hostile all the time. If they're in human line of sight, 24/7, they're fine. So the ones you get at restaurants, they're okay. The ones you get on food packets, the one you get at 7-Eleven to ask if you're happy or sad with their service, great, they're fine. There's human monitoring on them. But when they're on a wall, they're on a sign, they're on a parking meter, there's opportunity for someone to interfere with that process and thus take advantage of you. What else can I tell you? Like, there's so much stuff that occurs in that space. Like, I run security awareness training workshops for many of my clients. It only takes 1 to 2 hours. I work with partners that actually run scheduled programming and like scheduled training programs that run over the course of a year, like 3 to 4 times a year, where they come into a business and sit down with them. But there's opportunities out there. If you want to be aware of where to start with training, the Cyber Wardens program is a great free resource. It will take you 12 minutes. Literally, it is a 12-minute program. So want to do it in less? Sure, you can speed up the playback rate if you're that pressed for time.
So let's talk about something a little bit different, Ed.
Yeah, man.
Obviously, there was a big change last year in terms of the introduction of the Cybersecurity Act.
Yes.
How has that changed cybersecurity in Australia, if at all?
So that's recently come into force. So the Cybersecurity Act, not legal advice, is quite straightforward. If your organization pays a ransom, you are obligated to report it if your turnover is greater than $3 million. That's it. There's nothing more to it than that. And that is simply so that the government isn't banning payments. It is just making sure that if a payment is made or intended to be paid, you tell the government, because they are trying to build up data on how many times has it happened, how much money is paid, because it's all hidden behind insurance companies so they don't know. You can't hide that behind legal privilege. You can't do all sorts of things. If you are making a payment, you must declare it to the government if your turnover is greater than $3 million. Other than that, it's a really straightforward piece of legislation. Just gives us better
How will
data.
they enforce that?
So this is the problem I have with that piece of legislation. From memory, if you don't make a declaration, the fine is $87,400. It's like 16 penalty units or whatever it is. It's some amount of penalty units for some amount of money, but it's not much money. So the challenge will happen is that what will occur is some businesses will make a risk-based decision to not make a declaration based upon reputational harm, but that's a larger, more challenging area. But yeah, so it's a curly area.
Okay, so it sounds though as if there's some room for it to improve a little bit to make it a little bit more
Yes,
enforceable.
there is. Yeah, it's got some gaps. It needs some improvement, but it's an area that's constantly undergoing improvement. There's a lot of legislation they're talking about coming through the pipeline. We hear the rumors, but until pen hits paper, it's just speculation.
So IoT is everywhere in the smart home industry. So sensors, switches, cameras, thermostats, that and more.
Everything.
So from a cybersecurity perspective, why are these devices so vulnerable?
They're generally not patched. They're typically not put on a segmented or secure network. There's a couple of really high-profile attacks that can do the rounds, and they've somewhat become urban legend until you dig through the weeds and you actually find that, yes, here's the kernel of truth they're built around. The best one was in a Las Vegas casino, where they compromised the casino security network by way of a fish tank thermostat that was connected via Wi-Fi in an unsecured manner. Standard IoT device, wasn't patched, wasn't secured, but that was the attack path for someone to get in. Another really common one is cameras. I'll call out Hikvision. I like their stuff. They do good stuff. But by default, they're not secure. And most people set them up to traverse a firewall. Set a port forwarding rule and off you go. Now, if you do that and you haven't got proper authentication set up and those things, I don't think they're ever really patched, the bad guy can come in and look inside the building, the premises, the offices, the house, the bedroom. They need to be done in a secure manner lest you provide essentially an unlocked front door for someone to get in. That's one of the key things that causes a lot of these attacks. And that's some of the stuff that the Cybersecurity Act that came through last year tried to mitigate and provide some remediations around. So I'll call this out with a caveat. Not a lawyer. So what I'm about to say is not legal advice. Please seek legal counsel. But they started talking about what's called relevant products, which is IoT or smart devices that have direct or indirect network connectivity and intended for consumer use. Businesses have their own stuff they have to deal with. They have risk teams, cyber teams, IT teams. That's their problem. It includes things like the operational technology stuff. So the stuff you see in commercial facilities, industrial facilities do not fall into this. So things like PLCs and SCADA systems are outside the scope of this. It's consumer focused. Under the rules, you're not allowed to have default universal passwords. The device, when it is shipped, it must have a unique non-default cred. That means no more admin or admin password or admin 123456. You need to make sure that they have that, the devices you're installing have that, and that you change those default passwords. The manufacturers have to now disclose vulnerabilities and provide clear instructions of how consumers can actually report vulnerabilities back to the manufacturer. The items have to have a minimum support period. So that means we make it, let's say they release a device in June 2025, it must be supported for a period of time. Now, it's not clearly defined what that necessarily is, but it must be declared on purchase. That is how long that device receives security updates. The same way that you've got a Google Pixel phone, they go, cool, you'll be patched for the next 3 or 4 years. It's to make sure that you're not buying something that's going to be insecure in 2 weeks. The devices have to have a statement of compliance associated with them, which means like product type, batch numbers, supporting periods, stuff like that. And the manufacturer has to keep that for 10 years. The government has the right to step in and stop the supply of orders or recall non-compliant devices. So if your installers go and buy a heap of, let's just say, cameras, and they don't meet these requirements, the government can issue a recall notice and you have to go and rip them out. Yeah. The other big stuff we touched on a little bit earlier was things like the ransomware reporting, where if you make more than $3 million a year, you've got to make a declaration within 3 days. But yeah, that's the big thing where it comes together on to impact the integrator, the automation sort of industry at the consumer layer, because they've brought about some changes because there is the horror stories of the smart fridges doing stuff, the cameras being taken over. The good example is I may be wrong on the name of this. A few years back, there was a thing called the Mirai botnet, It was based upon a
Hmm.
vulnerability in security cameras. It became the largest and most powerful botnet on the planet. And there was a really good article, I think it was on Wired or Ars Technica about it, where they tracked down the history and all the other bits and pieces. It was essentially based upon, it started off as a security camera exploit put together by some guys who are running Minecraft servers who used it as a DDoS tool to knock other Minecraft hosts off the internet so they would get more business. Like, and then they started reselling it and using it for other things, and things kind of come unstuck. But that was a really well written article. But yeah, so
Well, Minecraft is serious business. Mm.
there's so much money in that. It's terrible. Like, how much did it sell for? What, 10 years ago, Microsoft? Like $4 billion? Like, I looked at that number and I was like, how
Yeah.
can there still be that many people who still don't have it? But give them credit. I got so many friends, kids who love that game. I don't mind playing it a bit myself, but yeah, it's serious money. And when you look at the hosting providers, there's big money in that. And if they can do something to take someone out, what they're trying to do with this act is try and protect the consumer, because they understand the business has more advanced systems. They have the people, the staff, the resources. The consumer doesn't even think about it. They're working from the assumption that it is already secure, that it's already fine, and it's already supported. And this is to make sure that what the consumer expects is being aligned to, is probably the best way to phrase it.
So, how do you get around those mindsets of either assumed security or the assumption of it's not going to happen to me? Why would it? I'm just
Oh,
live in a home in regional, name your state. But
yeah.
how do you avoid that?
If I find a way to successfully do that, I have just created $1 billion company. The challenge is that people are really bad at identifying and assessing their own risk. If people were great at assessing our own risk, no one would speed and no one would drink drive. We are really bad at looking at our own risk and making appropriate judgment. And through that lens, people, they go, oh, I'm too small to be a target. I've got nothing of value. It's like, well, no, you do. So you've installed a home automation system. You've installed cameras. You've got the security cameras through the house. You've got them in various locations. And let's just say you and your wife are having a lovely day and one thing leads to another, and that camera is compromised. How would you feel if that footage was leaked or unsolved? Now, the odds of you tracking down that person is next to zero, but that's now become wonderful blackmail material. Hey, pay us this or we will leak it to adult sites. We'll publish it to your Facebook. We'll publish it to your LinkedIn. Now, most people aren't going to go, woohoo, I'm famous. They're going to go, oh no, that's terrible. What do we do? What will people think of me? Well, it's your wife, so there's less of a problem there. But they still don't want the intimate details of their life getting out. It's that concern for privacy. So your privacy has a value and has a cost, and the blackmailers and the extorters will certainly try and leverage that against you. They will do whatever they can. While you don't think that you're a target, and you certainly may not be an active target unless you're a person of note or interest, politician, actor, sports person, whatever else it might be, there is still what we refer to as like the drive-by attacks. The bad guys are just firing off attacks against IP addresses and seeing what they hit. It's the equivalent of firing a shotgun towards a crowd. You're going to hit something. Someone's going to get hit. We're going to get lucky. They generally won't zone in on one person unless it is a high value target. In the cybercrime world, that's referred to as a whale. Same in the casino world. They're going after the high profile, high value individual who they know will be more likely to pay. And they'll issue them a 5, 6, 7-figure value. They'll issue you a 3 or 4-figure value to go, pay us this or we do X. The other one is the other one that's far more insidious is we've got footage of your kids playing in the bath or of your kids doing this. We will publish or sell that. And as bad as it sounds, there is an online dark marketplace for that sort of content that they will just sell it to. Now, even if you pay the ransom, they're still going to pay it. They're still going to publish it because they can sell it twice. What are the odds of you being able to successfully track down and capture that person? That rapidly approaches zero. If you get those kinds of notifications, yes, inform the police, inform the Australian Cybersecurity Centre that this has happened, inform the federal police. They want and need to know about that. But there's almost nothing that can be done once it's happened. So this is one of those things where you need to have the perimeter security, the firewall that's patched and up to date, that has a proper security license attached to it if you're using firewalls that are licensed in that way. Because once it's out, it's out. There's no getting it back. It's the genie out of the bottle problem. You can't unbreak an egg.
So it's really common practice for integrators to use multiple suppliers and
Yes.
buy multiple products from multiple suppliers and have them all talk together.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a easy way to know or identify suppliers who integrators should be trusting? I mean, who do you trust these days?
That is a very curly question. So there's a phrase that I think is a great descriptor of what cybersecurity is, that the entire problem of cybersecurity is one of supply chain risk, because somebody hasn't coded something right. Someone hasn't configured something right. Someone hasn't trained something right. You're managing your entire supply chain. There's no real authoritative list as to who's good and who's bad, because the market moves so quickly. Like a new camera vendor comes out, a new thermostat vendor comes out. What I would be looking at what the federal government is doing and allowing and banning from their government sites and military sites. You can normally find that on the USA CISA.gov site, or the Australians, I think it's the Australian Cybersecurity Centre has information on that as to certain vendors' technologies are not allowed on site. So things like Huawei aren't to be used for Australian telecommunications networks or defence systems. So if the government says, hey, we don't trust that, I'm happy to jump on that bandwagon and go, cool. I'm happy to follow that line and not use that product either. It may cost a little more, but with the complexity around computers and circuit boards and how they're made, there is no way to tell. There was a giant scandal a few years back around the company Micro Center, where they were accused of having backdoor microchips installed onto their motherboards on behalf of the Chinese government. And depending on who you ask, that's either been proven or disproven. Again, Ars Technica and Wired have some great write-ups on that. But if you ever look at a motherboard or a main board on a component, how would you ever tell without an advanced microelectronics engineering degree if something is supposed to be there or not? Like, I do this stuff for a living, and I accept the fact that the motherboard is in the configuration it's supposed to be in, because I know what to call the parts. I have no idea what exactly they should be doing, because that is working at a level, like in terms of working at a level below the stack that I work at. We have to trust that certain things are correct. So buy from the reputable brands. Now, a lot of them do offshore to China, and we hope that they're maintaining their own supply chain risk, but that's a problem they have to manage. And if they introduce supply chain risk by way of their products, what's that going to do to their brand? Like, what if Bose starts releasing low quality speakers? How much of their brand value is tied up in the quality of their product? So many of these other companies, their value is tied up in the notion that their product is secure and well designed. So they'll still be looking to the lowest cost manufacturer, but they're going to be taking it through the lens of who can do it properly at the lowest cost possible. They're not necessarily looking for, let's go build it out of a backyard workshop. They're going, can we compete on price? There's unfortunately no good answer. But generally speaking, if you were to find out what equipment is used in defense facilities, in government facilities, I'd have a very high degree of confidence in that equipment. But I also know that may come at a particular price point that may not be palatable for clients. So it becomes a balance. You just need to make sure that in your contract with your clients that you're not carrying the risk and liability for a cyber breach for a particular vendor's equipment. You don't make a warrant. You don't warrant that, hey, we guarantee this is secure. If you make that statement and something goes wrong, then prepare for lawyers at 10 paces.
Are there questions that integrators should be asking then? Or are there things that might be, I mean, would you consider it to be overkill to ask for things like schedules for patches and firmware updates or anything like that?
I think that is, I'd be asking the question, can we apply an update to this bit of firmware? What can we do to patch this bit of equipment? Can I patch it remotely? So this is probably a value add which the installers can do. If you can set up a centralized patch management system via, I'll just use the IT industry as an example, via, say, a remote management system, where you can push patches out to your cameras, to your controllers, to your firewalls, you can sell that as a maintenance service. So $100 a month, we will make sure your stuff is up to date. Or whatever you want to charge. $10 per device per month. That creates a nice recurring revenue. You've just got to set up tools to monitor for these vulnerabilities. So there's plenty of places you can look for these vulnerabilities, the manufacturer's website, the various vulnerability reporting bureaus, things like that. But asking, can it be updated, or is it a once and done? Because I've worked on equipment where what you get is what you get. There's no method to update. There's nothing. There's a classic attack against a specific series of hotel RFID door readers for guest rooms, where because they were not centrally managed, the only way to fix them was to go to every single door in every hotel, rip the faceplate off, plug into a hidden USB jack in there or USB connector, and apply the firmware update that way. How many hotels do you think have applied the update? Not many, because they go, the risk is low. Now, that's a question between them and their insurance company. But if your ultra high net worth family, you've just installed the back to base control systems, door locks, all the other bits and pieces from an IoT perspective, and that didn't have it on there, and there was an update and you didn't apply it, how's that going to look? Also, when you're applying the updates, there's been a series of supply chain attacks. You should be looking for what's called the MD5 checksum of the update, and then verifying the MD5 checksum of what you've downloaded to make sure what you've downloaded hasn't been tampered with. There has been a series of attacks against that as well. The Kaseya attack a few years back basically did that. So you're going to need to verify what you've got. But yeah, you are ask if you can apply an update. Work out a way to centrally manage and deploy patches to those pieces of firmware and that hardware so you can actually keep them up to date. Find out if the vendor offers a management solution for it. Some of them may even have a management platform you can license, white label, and resell. Is your industry familiar with white labeling?
Yes.
Cool, fantastic. So yeah, you can white label it and resell it at a margin. And again, you're providing a very basic monitoring service to make sure it's up to date, and you're creating monthly recurring revenue. Now, even if you don't want to do that, you want to become the guy who's just doing the installs, partner with somebody else and offer them, hey, do you want to take on this monitoring work for a percentage of the sale? So I don't know, Paul, your brother Peter decides to do installs only, and he goes, great, Paul, you can do the monitoring. We charge him $10 a month. I get $3, you get $7. It's like you're essentially getting money for jam, and you keep on top of it. Anything you can do to create a longer engagement with your client, improve your monthly recurring revenue helps. And then the other things you could and should be looking at, has the device been physically, or if it was penetration tested? So I've got a client that manufactures flame detection units for residential and commercial properties. They're pretty, they're sleek, they're all design focused and things like that. But we arranged to have a penetration test on that equipment. So that means we basically hired an ethical hacker to try and break into the device, break into the software that controls the device to see, can they do something? Can they trigger a false alert? Can they suppress a positive alert? So literally holding it over a candle and seeing if we can find a way to make it not go off digitally. We know it's picking up the thing and it's making itself known to the application, but can we suppress that? Which is its core focus. Can we make it not tell someone, hey, there's a fire in this room, do something about it? So devices should always be physically penetration tested. Now, most of the large companies will do that internally, but the clever ones will hire an external to do it as well, because if you built it and designed it, you're going to, oh, it's always been that way, or we know it doesn't do that. It's like, no, they should be hiring experts to do that type of thing because you need to make sure it's done properly. It matters. But I think I've answered your question in a roundabout series of ways. Yeah.
So moving forward,
Yeah, mate.
would there be a way to sum up, say, the 3 or 5 most important steps for integrators to secure IoT devices, whether it's network segmentation or
Yes.
device isolation or whatever that is?
Okay. So I would say, install a firewall. A router is not sufficient. Install a firewall. Make sure the firewall is up to date. Management interface is internal, unless you have to have it external to your new connection, but internal facing management interface. Make sure it's patched and up to date, and network segmentation. Let's call that number 1. Firewall configured correctly with stuff. 2, select a reputable vendor and make sure their devices are up to date and fully patched. And patchable is probably the next most important one. 3, I think I might have overextended myself here. 3, make sure that, no, I'm struggling with the third one here because the 2 biggest, usernames and passwords. Make sure that you're not using the default usernames and passwords. Make sure you're changing to a more secure username password configuration. I know it may be easier to have all of your clients on a single common username, password, common, like Luke the installer, password 23, whatever else it might be. Use a password manager to store unique credentials for each client. Make sure that those passwords, that password manager is protected by a multi-factor authentication. So then that way you've got a point of security. Because if all the passwords are the same, what can happen is they'll do essentially a spraying attack and they'll try and take over all the devices. If each device has a separate username and password, and yes, I know it's going to suck, sorry, but it will make it much harder for a bad guy to compromise things. I'm not sure if any of your devices are able to do API-based authentication. That might be another option, but the more advanced ones that can talk to or from or via an API, then doing API security would be another way, because that's an even better level of security if you're doing that correctly. That's about all I can think of right now. Those are the major ones: the network segmentation, the firewalls, the passwords, the patching. If you do that, you'll be in a much stronger and secure position. The standard stuff comes down to the standard cybersecurity awareness sort of things. Don't click on links you don't know. Be careful with QR codes. As an example, there's a range of attacks doing the rounds now where the bad guys are putting QR codes over parking meters. So not only are you giving your credit card number away to the attacker, you're going to get a parking ticket, so your day's going to suck twice. The more attacks that come out, the more attacks become successful. The bad guys move quickly because there's so much money involved in it for them. They will always move faster than the defenders can. So what you need to have is a set of layered defenses. If you've got your firewall with network segmentations, i.e. VLANs, you've got complex, unique passwords, you've got patched devices, for that environment to be fully compromised, they have to get past the firewall. And you can also set up things like geo-blocking on the firewall, so you can only log in if you're in Australia. So that's going to stop almost all of the remote attacks. Yes, they can VPN into the country and launch an attack from there, but most don't bother. They just hit launch from their server in Russia or China or Iran or wherever and just go, blah, what do I hit? So firewalls, patching, network segmentation, all these types of things, they have to get past all of those controls before they can take full control of the network or the environment. That you just made it so much harder. They're going to move on to a softer target because these bad guys have budgets to meet. They have KPIs to align to confirm that they've broken into this many organizations, we've issued this many millions in ransom. If you make their job just a little bit difficult, they move on. Think of them as being the schoolyard bully. The moment you stand up, they go, oh, okay, you're not easy pickings, and move on to the next one. So I think I might have mentioned earlier, the old axiom, if you don't have to be faster on the savannah than the lion, you got to be faster than the person you're with. If everyone else is sitting at like 2 out of 10 in terms of security posture, and you're sitting at a 5, like you are so much in so much of a better position. Now, the banks will have a 10 because they need to. But 5 is enough. So I hope that is contextualize that.
So I guess to kind of wrap it all up in a nice little bow for the people listening to this, I mean, what should be their next step? Obviously, probably coming from a standing start.
Okay, so coming from a standing start, have a look at your business and have an honest conversation with yourself and figure out the areas that you don't know enough about, and then start having conversation with others who can at least point you in the right direction. Have a chat to your underwriter and your broker to work out, do you have the right insurance for organization? Have a chat to legal representation to make sure your contracts are fully formed and in place. It puts you in the right position. Working out what you don't know, have a conversation with peers to find out what they're doing. There's lots of options and there's lots of resources. Like, I'm more than happy to sit down for 10 to 15 minutes and at least get you started in the right direction. And that's just me having a chat. Happy to do that because I do this because I want to see more small businesses be protected and not become victims.
Thank you to Luke Irwin for cutting through the noise and laying it out so clearly. The message is simple. Security is no longer optional. If you're touching connected devices, you're in the cybersecurity business, whether you like it or not. And while you don't need to be a specialist, you do need to understand where your responsibility ends, where your client's begins, and when it's time to bring in the right experts. That might mean reviewing your contracts, rethinking your insurance, or getting honest about the limits of your own skill set. Luke mentioned a great starting point, the SMB 1001 framework. It's accessible, it's practical, and it gives you a clear benchmark to work towards. Pair that with regular training and a network of trusted partners, and you're already ahead of most. If this episode raised questions or made you realise how exposed you might be, reach out. I'd love to hear your thoughts or point you towards people who can help. You can find me on LinkedIn or email directly at info@masterintegrator.com.au. And a quick reminder, Master Integrator merch is on its way. It's a small way to support the show and keep these conversations going. Thanks again to Chords and Connected Magazine for backing the podcast and backing the industry. Until next time, secure the install, secure your business, and don't leave the default password on anything. Ever. Thanks for listening to Master Integrator. I'm Paul Skelton. I'll see you next time.